The lion lay where the grass rose tall and pale around him, his body stretched along a slight depression in the earth as though he had settled there with intention. At a distance it looked like rest. The savannah held many such shapes through the heat of the day, animals conserving energy, surrendering briefly to stillness. But something about this stillness resisted that explanation. It was too complete, too fixed, as if the lion had not chosen it but been placed there by exhaustion. Rangers noticed him first because he did not respond to the passing of the wind. The grass moved in slow waves around his body, but his fur barely shifted. His chest rose and fell, though unevenly, each breath shallow and careful, arriving with effort rather than ease. It was a rhythm that did not belong to sleep. It carried the sound of work being done quietly, persistently, inside the body. Flies gathered along his flank and near his muzzle, settling longer than they should have. He did not lift a paw to brush them away. His ears did not twitch. Only once did his tail move, not in the habitual flick that keeps insects at bay, but in a slow, incomplete drag through the grass, as if the signal had reached the muscle late. Then it stilled again. A faint sound reached the rangers when they paused to watch. It was low and rough, slipping out between breaths, too soft to be a warning, too strained to be hunger. It surfaced briefly, then disappeared, leaving behind the quiet effort of breathing. The sound did not carry far. It was easy to miss unless one was already paying attention. The lion's eyes were open, fixed on nothing in particular. They did not track movement or sharpen with awareness when the light shifted. They simply remained, reflecting the sky in a dull, unfocused way. His head rested heavily against the ground, jaw slack enough to ease the passage of air. The muscles along his shoulders were defined but unmoving, held in a tension that did not resolve into action. The rangers did not approach quickly. Nothing about the scene suggested urgency in the usual sense. There was no thrashing, no attempt to rise, no sign of immediate threat. Instead, there was restraint, an animal conserving what little energy remained. Concern grew not from drama, but from accumulation. Each small detail added weight to the last until the pattern could not be ignored. They watched how the lion failed to respond to the presence of birds landing nearby, how his breathing hitched when he attempted a deeper inhale, how the grass beneath his ribs barely compressed with each rise of his chest. The land around him seemed to adjust too. Sound thinned. Even the insects moved cautiously as if the space demanded quiet. One ranger spoke softly, more to mark the moment than to change it. "Easy," he said, the word released gently into the air. It faded almost at once. The lion did not turn his head, but the faint groan did not return for several breaths, replaced by a longer pause between inhales. What lay before them did not feel like danger. It felt like imbalance. The lion was not guarding himself. He was enduring. His strength was still there, visible in the breadth of his body and the weight of his limbs, but it was folded inward, redirected toward survival rather than response. The rangers remained still, letting the scene hold its shape. The sun climbed higher, light settling across the grass and the lion's unmoving form. Nothing demanded immediate action, yet everything suggested that something was wrong. Quiet concern settled in the space between them, not as alarm but as recognition, as the savannah seemed to hold its breath alongside the lion who no longer could. The man did not move with purpose so much as with permission, advancing only when the space ahead of him seemed to allow it. He stopped often, letting the grass settle, letting the air return to its natural rhythm before taking another step. The lion remained where he was, his body unchanged by the approach, as though the effort required to respond no longer matched the value of doing so. From closer now the signs became clearer. The lion's eyes were open, but a thin haze dulled their surface, clouding what should have been sharp and responsive. They followed movement slowly, not locking on, not dismissing it either. Awareness lingered there, intact but tired. When the man shifted his weight, the lion noticed, his gaze adjusting just enough to acknowledge presence without committing to reaction. The chest told the deeper story. Each breath lifted the ribs unevenly, the motion shallow and restrained, as if expansion itself carried consequence. There was a pause at the top of every inhale, a moment where the body seemed to hesitate before releasing air again. It was the breathing of an animal still fighting to remain upright in his own strength, even while lying down. The man stopped again, lowering his posture slightly, reducing his outline against the sky. He did not reach for anything. His hands remained open, visible, relaxed at his sides. The lion's ears twitched once, then settled back into stillness. The tail did not move. A low sound rolled from the lion's chest, barely audible, rough and restrained. It was not a roar, not even a clear warning. It carried no forward motion. It was the sound of a boundary acknowledged but not defended, a reminder that awareness still lived within the body, even if strength had begun to thin. The man waited until the sound passed. He did not answer it immediately. When he did speak, his voice was low and even, barely more than breath. "Easy," he said, not as reassurance, not as command, but as acknowledgement. The word hung briefly in the air, then dissolved. The lion's breathing did not worsen. If anything, it steadied. From this distance, the lion's posture revealed itself as deliberate. His weight was shifted slightly to one side, muscles along his flank held tight as though guarding something unseen. His forelegs were drawn in closer than rest would require, claws partially extended into the soil, anchoring him in place. Pride still lived in the set of his shoulders, in the way his head, though heavy, remained aligned rather than collapsed. The man took one more step, then stopped again. The lion's eyes tracked the movement this time, slower than before but focused. The low rumble returned, quieter now, more vibration than sound. It was not an escalation. It was a statement of presence, offered without threat. Flies gathered along the lion's muzzle, settling without resistance. He blinked once, deliberately, then let his eyes reopen. The effort seemed measured, chosen. Even in weakness, there was control in what he allowed and what he did not. The man crouched slightly, not advancing further. He studied the rhythm of breath, the tension held in muscle, the absence of panic. This was not surrender. It was restraint. The lion was still aware of himself, still maintaining dignity within limitation. The body was failing him, but the instinct to remain himself had not. Around them, the savannah resumed its quiet movements. Grass whispered against itself. Somewhere distant, a bird called and then fell silent. The moment did not sharpen. It softened. The man stayed where he was, understanding now that this was not an approach meant to provoke response. It was an approach meant to be witnessed. The lion lay still, weakened but present, pride intact beneath the weight of breath and effort, holding his ground not through force, but through awareness alone. Care entered the space without announcement. It came as stillness held longer than expected, as hands moved only when breath allowed it, as voices stayed absent unless absolutely necessary. The lion remained where he was, his body accepting the attention not with relaxation, but with tolerance shaped by necessity. Each adjustment was made around him, never over him, never assuming permission beyond what his posture allowed. The land began to feel different before anything could be seen. Sound thinned again, not abruptly but as if drawn outward. The grass at the edge of the plain shifted in ways that did not belong to wind alone. The ranger noticed it first in peripheral vision, a slight interruption in the uniform movement of stems. He did not turn his head immediately. He waited, allowing the pattern to declare itself. A shape resolved at the far edge of sight. Then another. They stood apart from one another at first, barely distinguishable from the land that held them. Tawny forms, low and still, watching without advance or retreat. Their presence did not press forward. It settled. As care continued, more shapes appeared, spaced evenly, emerging from behind brush and shallow rises. They did not cluster. They did not signal to one another. They simply became visible, one by one, until the edges of the plains held them in quiet suspension. Lions. Several of them. Their bodies were aligned toward the center, toward the lion on the ground, toward the humans moving with such restraint. The sick lion did not lift his head. He did not need to. His breathing changed slightly, the pauses between inhales lengthening, then settling again. His ears angled outward, receiving the distant presence without alarm. Whatever he sensed did not demand movement. It allowed him to remain. The rangers became aware of the weight of observation. Not threat, not challenge, but judgment in its most neutral form. Every movement carried consequence now. Every shift of weight, every adjustment of hand or stance existed within a larger field of awareness. The lions at the edge did not growl. They did not pace. They watched with the stillness of animals who understand time differently. One of the rangers paused mid-motion and eased his hand back, recognizing that the moment required less, not more. Another adjusted position by inches, aligning with the rhythm already established. No one spoke. Words would have fractured the careful balance that had formed. The lion on the ground released a low sound, softer than before, more breath than voice. It did not rise into warning. It passed through him and out into the grass, fading almost immediately. The lions at the edge did not react outwardly. Their attention did not sharpen. It simply held. The sense that the lion had never been alone settled quietly into the space. His stillness had not gone unnoticed. His endurance had been witnessed long before humans arrived. The plains had been watching. The pride had been waiting, not intervening, not fleeing, but measuring. One ranger whispered, barely audible, "Easy," the word offered as continuity rather than instruction. It carried only a short distance before dissolving. The sick lion's breathing steadied again, the shallow rhythm maintaining itself without collapse. As the sun shifted, light stretched across the grass, outlining the distant forms more clearly now. Eyes reflected faintly. Bodies remained grounded, composed, unhurried. The message was not protection or threat. It was presence. Care continued within that gaze, gentler now, more deliberate than ever. The humans understood that what they were allowed to do existed within permission that could be withdrawn without warning. Every movement was being recorded, not as action but as intent. The land held all of it, the watchers, the watched, the careful hands, the fragile body. Nothing moved toward resolution yet. The plains simply observed, patient and silent, reminding everyone present that even in sickness, even in stillness, the lion had never truly been alone. They came into view without announcement, as if the land itself had decided the moment had arrived. One shape became many, then many became a presence too large to ignore. Dozens of lions stood at the edge of the plain, their bodies spaced with intention, forming a wide, quiet semicircle that enclosed the scene without tightening around it. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They simply stopped and watched. The man felt the shift immediately, not as fear but as pressure. The air changed, thickened by attention. He did not turn quickly. He did not rise or lower himself further. He remained exactly as he was, hands lowered and open, posture neutral, his body offering no challenge and no invitation. Any movement now would be interpreted, not reacted to. That knowledge settled heavily, but it did not demand urgency. The lions held their ground. Their ears were forward, their tails still. Some stood, others sat back on their haunches, a few lay down with forelegs crossed, their posture calm but deliberate. Eyes fixed on the center, on the lion lying in the grass, on the human's position near him. No sound came from them. No signal passed between bodies. Their coordination existed without visible communication. The sick lion did not look toward them. His breathing remained shallow but steady, his body committed to the ground. Yet something in his posture changed. The tension that had once held him rigid eased by a fraction, as though the burden of vigilance had been shared. He did not rise. He did not need to. He was no longer the sole point of attention. The man remained still through it all. His awareness expanded to include the full arc of watching bodies, but his focus stayed centered. He did not raise his hands. He did not step back. He did not continue forward. He allowed the moment to hold him where he was. Respect here was expressed through restraint. The pride observed every detail. The way the man's weight was balanced. The way his gaze stayed low, never locking onto a single lion for too long. The way care had been given, not hurried, not possessive, not forceful. This was not a test that would be resolved through action. It would be resolved through consistency. A faint sound passed through the group, not a vocalization, but the subtle movement of breath and muscle adjusting. One lion shifted position, then settled again. Another blinked slowly. The semicircle held. Time stretched without escalation. The sun edged lower, light thinning and softening across fur and grass. Insects returned to the air, their presence signaling that the land did not anticipate sudden violence. The man's breath remained slow, deliberate. He allowed it to be seen. The sick lion released a long, quiet exhale. The sound was barely audible, but it carried weight. The lions watching did not react outwardly, yet the moment registered. The semicircle did not close. It did not dissolve. It held, as if acknowledging that the balance remained intact. This was not trust offered freely. It was trust measured and conditional, extended only as long as intent remained clear. The man understood that. His stillness was not passive. It was active restraint, chosen again and again with each passing second. No charge came. No retreat followed. The pride continued to watch, patient and unblinking, allowing the act of care to exist within their presence. The land absorbed the tension without releasing it, holding the moment at its peak without forcing resolution. In that quiet semicircle, something rare unfolded. Not dominance, not submission, but mutual recognition. The man remained still. The lions remained watching. And for a long, suspended stretch of time that was enough. The change was not dramatic, but it was unmistakable. The lion's breathing, once shallow and guarded, found a steadier rhythm. With effort, he lifted his head from the grass, holding it there longer than before, neck muscles engaging without the tremor that had marked every earlier movement. His eyes cleared slightly, focus returning in small increments. He did not attempt to rise, but the act of lifting his head was enough. It signaled that the crisis had loosened its hold. The humans did not respond outwardly. There was no relief spoken, no shift toward urgency or pride. Care concluded the same way it had begun, quietly, with restraint. Hands withdrew first, then bodies followed, each movement measured to avoid breaking the fragile calm that had settled. The man straightened slowly, not all at once, allowing his height to return in stages. He stepped back without turning, then paused, letting the space breathe. The pride responded almost immediately, though not with haste. One lion rose from the edge of the semicircle and moved closer, stopping well short of the humans. Another followed, then another, their approach calm and unforced. The semicircle softened and folded inward, attention shifting away from the people and toward their own. The watching had ended. The work of belonging resumed. The man took another step back, then another, his hands still lowered, his gaze kept neutral. No one spoke. There was nothing to add. The lion on the ground turned his head slightly, eyes tracking the movement of his kin rather than the retreating humans. A low sound passed through his chest, quieter now, more breath than voice. It carried no warning. It was simply presence. As distance opened, the humans became part of the periphery. The land seemed to accept that transition readily. Grass lifted where knees had pressed it down. Insects returned in greater number, threading the air with soft motion. The light shifted toward evening, stretching shadows across the plain and softening the sharpness of the day. The pride closed in around the weakened lion without crowding him. Bodies formed a loose shelter, some standing, others lowering themselves into the grass. One lion lay close enough that their flanks nearly touched. Another sat facing outward, posture relaxed but attentive. The sick lion lowered his head again, resting it against the earth, breathing steady enough now to fade into the larger rhythm of the group. The man walked away without looking back. Each step carried him farther from the clearing, though the weight of it remained. He did not try to define what had occurred. He knew the land would not explain it, and the lions would not remember it in ways that words could hold. Still, something had passed between them, something shaped by restraint and timing rather than control. Dusk settled gently. The sky cooled into muted tones, and distant birds crossed the horizon in quiet arcs. Wind moved through the grass in long, even waves, carrying scent and sound back into balance. Behind him, the pride remained, gathered and present, the weakened lion no longer isolated within his own endurance. Ahead, the path opened back into ordinary terrain. The man continued on, carrying with him a moment that did not belong to him but had allowed him near, a rare alignment of trust, witnessed and released, as the savannah folded the day into night and kept its silence.